Whiskey Jason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American in Germany tasting rare and exotic whiskeys, and today I have something from Dingle, Irish whiskey, to be exact, single pot still release, triple distilled Irish whiskey, 46.5%, one of 800 bottles worldwide. Ta-da! I was walking through the streets of Dublin. I was on my way to the Teeling Distillery. And when you walk through Temple Bar, you see the bars all over the place. And in front of the bars, you have these wonderful casks that you can sit around, put your drink on, and so on. And you have Teeling, you have Jameson, you have a few other things. And then suddenly I saw 4 or 5 barrels with the word Dingle. I was like, oh, it was front of the Porterhouse, an interesting bar, because they actually have the Dingle Whiskey Bar. The Dingle Whiskey Bar, 47 to 47 Nassau Street in Dublin, 2. And so I walked into the bartender, was wearing my Whiskey Jason t-shirt, and said, do you have Dingle single pot still? And he said, well, of course. And he reached up and pulled out the one bottle that had this much and a new bottle that was totally full. I was like, oh, can I have a dram? And he said, but of course. And he said, hey, you're a Whiskey Jason. I've never heard of you. I said, well, here's my card. I'm a YouTuber. And he said, oh, that's interesting. I asked, could I please have this? I'm going to go to a tasting anyways. I don't have time to drink. Could I have it in the bottle? Gave him my funnel, gave him a little bottle. He said, yeah. And since you're a YouTuber, here's a little bit, an extra dram. And so this was actually 4 CLs for 14 euros, which I think is absolutely acceptable. I was so happy. This bottle, if you could have received one of the original 800, you are going to pay directly from the distillery 90 euros. Today they're online from between 2 and 500 euros because they're collector items. They're ornaments. By the way, that is one of the questions I always have. The distillery knows that when they bring out 800 bottles, these are ornaments. They know this is, I think, 3 years and 4 days. This is one of the first 4 casks they actually did way back when, 3 years ago. And this is the first time a distillery, except Middleton, has produced single pot still whiskey in Ireland for decades. Single pot still, a minimum of 30% unmalted barley, a minimum of 30% malted barley, and whatever's in between you want to do, and up to 5% of something else. It could be wheat, it could be corn, it could be it could be, well, we wouldn't put barley in there. It could be wheat, it could be corn, it could be rye or whatever. But usually most of the distilleries go, okay, 40% unmalted, 60% malted barley, and they just distill it. And they're the first people who actually have produced and also bottled single pot still in Ireland outside of Middleton. Cooley had the capacity, but they never actually, according to my knowledge, and never actually produced a single pot still. This was aged for 3 years and some days in an XPX Pedro Jimenez cask, and it is non-chilled filtered. So, my nose, the nosing. Alright, very nice. I get a caramel mixed together with the PX sherry notes. It's an old, dark PX. If I go back to the Dingle batch number 3, which I actually still have back here someplace, that has very light port. Oh yeah, that's the reason why, because that was port. The number 2, which I didn't like, which I also have a little bit left back there, had a very bright Ortolozzo and PX mixture, and it just kind of was too fresh for my palate. This is matured, this is old, this is calmed down. And what I really must admit they did a great job of, it's actually just a fine marriage of those PX elements as well as the single pot still release. Triple distilled, 46.5%, non-chilled filter as mentioned. I do get the pot still spice, but just barely. Redbreast is basically the only single pot still we have in the market in Ireland. Jim Murray from the Whiskey Bible kept on encouraging them, even though it wasn't a hit, especially in the 2000s and so on. Keep it up, keep it up. This is going to be the national unique brand of Irish whiskey. Keep it up. And they did, luckily, and now many of the new distilleries that are popping up are going to also make single pot still whiskey. Okay, on the nose, it's acceptable, almost enjoyable, but not exactly. It's not one of those whiskeys that I'm going to go, it's one of those whiskeys I'm going to go, okay. And it really is okay. Young, metallic, pot still spices. A covering layer, a blanket of PX, old, dark, ripe grapes. Very interesting. I have downstairs, this is really interesting. A friend of mine had 13 different PX bottles opened, and he gave me a 2cl of each, and they're so different. You have the Lustau here from Redbreast that they use for there, and then there's the a Williams that was 26-year-old something. It was like syrup, and then you have something else that was the Fino, which was not even my world. There are so many different types of sherries in there. It was just fascinating to actually have an insight into that world of what sherry can be like. Going back to the PX here, I'm going to do something, and I do actually know at the moment this is not going to work out. This is not a whiskey that likes water. I'm just going to put in this time my 3 drops. In my German video, I actually tried to dilute it a little bit. Now, the first thing that happens is that burnt creme brulee just comes at you. It's almost like a burnt cask, almost hits your face. It does mellow down after a moment. It does turn into more of a grape. When you make grape wine, you stamp on the wine, and you have that starting of the fermentation. In German, it's called Most. M-O-S-T. I don't even know what it's called in English. I've never done my wine making process in English. I've only done that in German. And that's what I'm getting here. The beginning of the fermentation of those dark, rich, almost black grapes. And also on the palate, it just gets a little sharper, just gets a little bit more metallic. It's not really great. All right, so WhiskyJason here. My enthusiasm has been somewhat dampened. I was, and it's like, well, and also the people who have reviewed it online, there's only been a few, have all just kind of gave it from 5 to 10, maybe a 6 to 10, and so on, and I'm going to give it actually a solid C. It's not a C minus, it's definitely not a C plus, it's a C. This is a collector's item. If it's one of the 800 first releases of a single pot still from a brand new distillery, the first people who have ever done it, ever outside of Middleton, this is something you want to buy and collect, not buy and drink. And I can also recommend keeping those bottles closed and flipping them if you can actually do so with a good conscience. Some people can, some people can't. All right, so value for money. Imagine I was one of the 800 lucky people that actually got a bottle for 90 euros. What would be my value for money? C minus, just because of the exclusivity. Now, I'm paying 200 euros for it, secondary market. It's a D. I'm paying 500 euros for it, secondary market. It's an F. I'm definitely not worth the price, not even as a secondary market flipping investment. Now, what could happen, and I think what will happen, is it will actually go from 3 to 4 to 500, and then continue up until maybe 800, 1,000 euros per bottle. There's only 800 of them. There were only 800s. We've killed now 798 with the bar there, and I'm sure a couple other people have also opened their bottles. And every time someone opens up their bottle, the rest of the bottles get a little bit more valuable for those crazy collectors out there, and Dingle really is something people are collecting at the moment. Thank you very much for watching. My question of the day is, what is your favorite single pot still whiskey from Ireland? There's not much choices. It's going to be a Redbreast, if you haven't tried the Dingle and said this is your favorite. The new companies that are starting them will be producing single pot still in the future, but at the moment there are only 2 companies doing it, Middleton, and here are Dingle. So I would have to say it is my Redbreast single cask, 12-year-old cask strength. It's not single cask, it's just cask strength. So good. All right, thank you very much for watching. Whiskey Jason here. Please like, please subscribe, please tell others about this crazy American and Germany tasting rare and exotic whiskeys. Many times things you'll never ever see, never ever get your hands on. Oh, and by the way, if anyone's out there in Europe that could actually sell me a Dingle cask strength, batch 2 or batch 3, I didn't even see a cask strength for batch 1. I would be willing to pay money for a 2 or 5 CL sample. Would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. Whiskey Jason here. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays my videos come out. Bye-bye.